we'd like to be doing here, and they'll just give us the benefit of their experience and maybe give us something to hope for. So hands together for our Canadian friends. And which of you would like to go first? The dog, obviously. Can you speak in wolf?
Do you want to? No, I'll just stand up. Hi, I'm Sista. I'm from Vancouver, Canada, and I grow cannabis. I make medicine out of it, and I have about 200 patients that I help on a regular basis. I make cannabis medicine, not all the medicine. Not all the medicine I make has THC in it. I extract the roots. The roots have no THC. I also boil down the leaves, and there's no THC in those either. And then I make medications, either bombs, or when I make oil from the cannabis flowers, I make drops, suppositories, and capsules, as well as some cancer patients use the whole extract for treatment, and usually about 1 gram of cannabis resin a day.
So my name is Asia May Moon, and I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia. I got into the marijuana industry by starting a dispensary called 3 Happy Cats, and it was the THC dispensary. I closed it in December of 2015 due to not being able to acquire proper licensing, as well as some conflicts within the community, which made it very hard to keep my doors open. I currently run a sorry, I'm spilling my slushie. I run a magazine called 12 High Chicks, and it's an annual magazine, and there are 12 women, and that's one for every month of the year, and it's the THC magazine. And that's pretty much how I've been spending my days, as well as running a head shop online where I sell bongs and pipes and all sorts of accessories except for the marijuana itself. And that's pretty much me, and that sums me up. And beside me is Robert Laurie.
Thank you, Asia May. Yes, my name's Robert Laurie. I am a lawyer that works exclusively in the cannabis industry. I'm from Vancouver, but I've had the pleasure to live all over the world, including Houston, Texas, which is very different than Vancouver. Ireland, England. I went to law school in England at Oxford University, and so I've had the opportunity to study drug cultures all over the world. And well, being from Vancouver, there's been a lot going on with the legalization and regulation of dispensaries. Medical cannabis is being recognized as an alternative medicine. You have the federal government who's come out with a proposed legislation, which is, I guess, the first G7 of the G7 countries to make legalization part of a political agenda. Now, despite all of these good things, there's, again, a history of medical patient and activism and civil disobedience, which in Canada, we have what's called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which was entrenched into our Constitution in 1982. And so I think it would be interesting for Australians to consider, do we need a charter? Is that something that would be of interest? Because I'm interested, when I first heard and learned about Australia from meeting Michael and Kathleen in Vancouver at one of Asia's events, hearing things about mouth swabs on the side of the road and other issues of being arrested for simple possession and things like that, and freedom of speech and other civil liberties in Canada, which I thought everyone in the Commonwealth had this, but it seems Canada's quite unique. So I think, you know, Australia, at least as I've always seen it from, you know, the people I've met, seems like a very, you know, decent, beautiful, rich country with wonderful traditions and appreciation for civil rights. It would make sense to have that. entrenched in some form of a constitutionally protected basis. Because unfortunately, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more involvement with government in personal and private affairs, especially if you're online. Anyway, but I'm involved in the cannabis industry, from representing licensed producers to illegal dispensaries, regulated dispensaries, high-profile activists, and well, entrepreneurs and folks who are in interesting situations with cannabis. So again, my name is Rob Laurie, and it's wonderful to be here and part of this panel. Who else we got? Here we go.
Thanks, Rob. And can I just say quickly that we need one of you here all the time, because we've got lots of work here for you, lots and lots of work. I'm Becky B, that's what you'll find me on Facebook. I'm from the Sunshine Coast. I advocate for cannabis patients. People contact me and I source them safe medicine. In doing that, I engage their local politician, I engage their health providers, be that specialists, GPs, whatever. We let them know that what we're doing. And I don't stop talking about cannabis generally. I believe that most people should have it. I believe we've all got a right to it. And I believe that if you're brave enough to stand up and make the decision to choose cannabis, then you should feel confident in what you're doing enough not to keep it a dirty little secret, because cannabis has been a dirty little secret for way, way, way too long. So that's me, basically, the Gobby activist from Sunshine Coast.
Well, I suppose we're talking about cannabis activists. I've got Jenny Hallam sitting next to me, who is, she's our heroine of the moment, and that's definitely with an E on the end, and who is fighting the good fight, really, on behalf of all of us. So there's a lot being said. You're making all the news channels now, which is fucking marvellous. So just a few, what do you think is important to tell everyone here today?
If I can get one message across to everybody, is don't wait, don't be scared. Stop listening to this government when they tell you that you need to wait for a legal supply, because if you do, some of you will die. So don't do that. Be strong, realise if we all do it, they can't arrest us all. So be strong, stand up, don't ever be ashamed of trying to save your life, because that's all you're doing, and you shouldn't feel bad for that. So yeah, that's my message. Stand strong, don't wait, we will defy, and we will get this through.
Enough is enough. And I think that's, you know, the catch cry that's now coming from everyone's lips is enough is enough. You know, we need this medicine and we need it now, and I couldn't agree more with what you say. But next to her is Nikki Freeburn, who runs a clinic, who is actually doing just that. So if you'd just like to say a few words of what you're doing now.
Thanks, Deb. So my name is Nikki Freeburn, and I started an official clinic 3 years ago to assist those who are using medical cannabis, but with more a holistic and integrated supportive system. And I'm very, very passionate about ensuring that there is a whole picture here, not just handing out the medicine and off you go. So, you know, we look at nutrition, we look at herbs. I'm a herbologist, a medical intuit, and really dedicated to ensuring that we move forward, especially in what's happening here in Australia, in some kind of cohesive movement together. And Rob, you've just given me a word that I would love to introduce what we've been talking about with standardisation, but charter. We need a charter, and I don't know why I hadn't thought of that term before. So we're going to look at some kind of charter as a group. So I suppose personally I've probably seen about 500 individuals myself, and we have a great team, and you know, over the years it's thousands, and we're wanting to learn more and more. We don't have all the answers, we've got hardly any, maybe this big, and it's a never-ending, it's a vertical learning curve once you start on this one. And I had to get over my own prejudices around cannabis. To me it was a drug, it was illegal, I was having a lot of issues around it, and being around it in fear of the law. I'm not a recreational user, therefore it was very foreign to me. And then one day I just realised that this was much bigger than one person being a little bit worried about being picked up or caught or spoken to by the police, got over it and decided I better get in there and do something. And so then we opened the Initial Wellness Clinic, which is now in Terrigal on the Central Coast. So that's me, and I'm privileged to be sitting with this great group of people. Thank you.
other speakers appear to have disappeared off the face of the earth, as can happen in Nimbin. We shall probably find them, you know, stretched out somewhere looking at the sky. But I thought we might just pick up on something that Rob said, which is, you know, and then Nikki repeated, which was the word charter. Now, what I think is interesting is that if we go through our Australian Constitution, written in there already are things that we could use to bring forward into a charter without even having to make any new laws or even to change the Constitution in any way. And I think that the main thing that we need to grab back is the right to choose what medicines we put into our bodies. You know, it is in actual fact a basic human right. And there is no government in the world that should be able to tell us what medicines we can choose.
This is where his brain's coming, because we don't have a Human Rights Act in Queensland.
Well, the thing is what we do have is an Australian Constitution. So what we need is a lawyer that can start studying the Australian Constitution. Now, I'm not looking at you as in, but I would like your comments on this, is that, you know, I think that we need to start looking at what we've already got in our Constitution and what we can bring forward out of that. And I'd just like your comment on that as to whether you think that's possible. And I don't think you have to know our Constitution. I think that's more of a general legal question.
Well, one of the reasons it was I wanted to study law in England and at Oxford University was because of the Socratic method. And then after that, while practicing in London, in fact, it was neat because Gandhi had been a lawyer who studied in London and wrote about how difficult it was to be a strict Hindu vegetarian at law school in like the turn of the last century. So I always thought he was quite an inspiration. I mean, here is one man that sort of, through passive civil disobedience and non-violence, took down the British Empire, right? I think there's more citizens who are interested in this legal fight and legal battles, and I think the numbers and the masses need to speak up, because it's the numbers and the masses really who keep the trains running on time, the economy going, all sectors and so on. And I don't know, maybe this is something that the Australian people need to decide, because in Canada I was quite young at the time, but you know, Pierre Trudeau is the father of our current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. You know, it was a huge political issue to get a charter into our Constitution because of the failure of a Bill of Rights. I mean, Bill of Rights, different between a charter and a Bill of Rights is, Bill of Rights is just regular legislation. I mean, that, you know, that can change when there's, you know, changeover in the political administration. But with a charter, to amend that, you require in Canada what's called 750. The 7 of the 10 provinces, and what are we, 2 territories now, and so on. Yeah, so you essentially need to have the majority of the provinces and territories and 50% of the Canadian population to change these entrenched fundamental rights. And so let's just take the simple example that I'm baffled. The mouse swabs, you know, swabbing everybody that comes into town, that would be caught in Canada under fundamental justice as being not the least minimally intrusive method of dealing with intoxicated, inebriated drivers. I don't even know what their purpose. The purpose just seems to be a blanket prohibition. Arrests, and there's no rights in that. Like, fuck you, this is my body. Why are you sticking something in my mouth that I don't know what you're going to be doing with that data? Is that data going to be shared with other international agencies or governments and so on? And so here's the thing, where they're just trying to collect data on people who are coming to a peaceful assembly and a festival, but yet that could affect you in terms of employment or something down the road. And again, I guess where I think the people need to consider is, well, studying political philosophy, you'd read about people like John Locke and the appeal to heaven. When government stops listening to the people and is implementing laws that are arbitrary for an improper purpose, well, that's the only appeal left, is the appeal to heaven. And you know, the United States rebelled against the tyranny of the British Crown, and other nations seem to have done it. Ireland had a successful revolt through things, so who knows? Things can change, but really it comes down to what do the people want. And if your views are not being represented at all by the legislators and the executive in Canberra, then I think you need to be holding your local MLAs account, because aren't they coming from the regions and going into Parliament? If they're not doing what you need, then perhaps get them out and get someone else in. Yeah, go for it.
So speaking on the political level, I'm not entirely sure how things work here in Australia. I do know you have a bit of a different voting system with preferences and what have you. We don't have that at all. Though, if we want laws changed within our political parties, we need to write policies, and we need our political parties to vote and agree on it. And unfortunately, there's not enough of us in those political parties actually making a difference. I joined the NDP in 2011, and to be fair, the NDP is the New Democratic Party of Canada. It's a federal and provincial party. They are not a provincial party in Quebec. That's the only province and territory where they don't have their own party. Anyways, regardless, going back to the point of it, is that if you have enough people that are like-minded that join these political parties, you can have policies written, changed, and passed through. But if not enough people show up, the policy gets dismissed and put away, or in some cases, it's totally dismissed and you don't get to see it again. It has to be rewritten and brought back up. In 2011, when I went to the NDP convention, I was kind of naive. I'd never been to a convention. I didn't know anything about politics. I actually didn't know the difference between provincial and federal politics. And I had some young people, actually the young New Democratic Party, sitting at a table, and they sat me down with a big binder and basically gave me the speed read-through on how federal policy and how the federal NDP worked. And by the end of it, we had passed a policy that allowed people to be able to walk around with small amounts of marijuana without getting prosecution from the police. But if not enough of us showed up, it wouldn't have been passed. And everybody needs to find a party that is kind of is your own. Don't just join any party. Join the one that's best for you. You know, you can change anything in that party if you connect with enough like-minded people. And like I said, I've watched policies form because enough of us got together. And I'm pretty sure if you guys all did the same thing, create your own parties, like I said, change other parties, join them, all of that, that is what's going to make a difference. And that's how you're going to get a charter, is if you guys work together.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. If anyone's actually got anything to comment on that, because things are a little different in Australia. We're supposed to have a bipartisan sort of government, but that's not really the case, as most of us know.
So a different side to what I do is I speak to politicians. When a patient or person comes to me and asks me to help them source cannabis, I then ring the politician and say, I'm just letting you know that I've got a 35-year-old Crohn's patient in your area who is now on cannabis medicine, and they're on THC cannabis medicine. And so the next time you're in Parliament and making one of these calls that aren't really doing anything for us anyway, you need to remember that that person lives in your area and you are paid to serve them too. By doing that, fundamentally, if that person gets raided, or I get raided, I can then say to the police, well, on this date, I rang this politician and I told this politician that I'd given this person cannabis, and that politician has a duty of care to report me. But he didn't. 2 weeks later, he rang me up and gave me a person's name so I can get them a pound of cannabis. And this, I shit you not. I shit you not. Most of my patients now come from politicians. I shit you not. And you have to be able to do that too. You have to kind of be brave where you don't feel it. You have to tell them what you're doing, because if you tell them in the right way, you'll have their sympathy, and with that you have a little bit of their power. Because if you hide away, as I said before, and make it a dirty little secret, these politicians don't know what they don't know. I walked into a Liberal MP, and I hate the Liberals, I'll be honest with you. I've been a union delegate and a Labor girl all my life up until the last few years. And I said to him, I'll never vote for you. I said, but if I've got a duty of care to the community, then you damn well straight do. and I introduced him to one child. And he sat for half an hour with this child and played plasticine. That politician then resigned from the LNP because the LNP wouldn't support cannabis medicine in Queensland. Now, he is one man. He can't do it all, just like your MP can't do it all on his own, nor can yours. But if we can get a network of MPs in different states, in different suburbs in these states that all say, well, you know what, I believe their story. I'll work with you. Darren Hinch is here. Fiona Patton was supposed to be here. Steve Dixon sent his regards. This is moving mountains because these politicians 5 years ago wouldn't have stepped foot in this town, and certainly not this weekend. So we have to play with the devil we know, and the devil we know is politics and legislation. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't break the law. Fuck the law. Dead straight. I can't say it any simpler. Law, when it costs life, is no good. Okay? And I'm yet to find a family that have been raided purely for cannabis medicine. Okay? There's been situations where agencies and police have become involved, but never, ever, ever purely just because of cannabis unless they're a provider. They're not targeting you, the patient. They're targeting the people like us up on here. Okay? And that's okay because we walked into that knowing that, didn't we, Jen?
Yes, we did.
We did. These guys too, you know. We walked into it knowing we were breaking the law. You have to have faith that this community have got you. There's some shit going on and what goes on behind closed doors and everything else.
I would say I walked into it knowing that I would change the law.
Yes.
Can I just make one comment? I've actually been pulled in by municipalities to speak to mayors throughout British Columbia, and you have the mayors of the municipalities are the ones that contract with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And so if you've got like a local municipality that decides, hey, we have a heroin crisis or an opioid crisis, and there's a justifiable reason for having reasonable, dignified access to cannabis, then what has worked is actually by going to the city and the RCMP and saying, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, and we're going to do it anyway. Well, not me, that's the clients, what they'll say. And essentially, when it comes time to rehire the agreement with the police and the municipality, if the RCMP aren't respecting what the municipality's done, there's talk that they won't renew their services. So ultimately, I feel that the real change comes from the grassroots communities. Because like was said here, they're the ones that are accountable to the MPs. That would be the local folk, not the ones that, you know, that aren't here representing the interests of this region. Here, I'll pass this over.
A few years ago, Richard Di Natale put a submission before the Senate indicating that he felt that the regulation of cannabis required its own bill, that it would not fit into the TGA model. And as time has gone on, that's become abundantly clear. And I read those submissions, and there was a really interesting one from the New South Wales it was the New South Wales lawyers like drug reform paper. And there was a paragraph in there that was entitled Respect for the Law. And this is exactly what Beck was talking about, is that as a population, if we don't respect a law, then we should not be obliged to keep it. And I think this is, probably the worst example of this at the moment is the drug testing at the roadside. I mean, they're trying to tell us that they're trying to catch people who are driving impaired. Yet they only test for the 3 drugs that cause the least amount of driving impairment. Are you aware of that? They only test for methamphetamine, ecstasy, and cannabis. They don't test for any pharmaceutic products, anything like the benzodiazepines, the anti-epileptic drugs, the antipsychotic drugs, the antihistamines. I could keep going. All of these things.
Stop. Sorry, folks, we're going to carry on, but we have a special guest that we should join our group.
My apologies, I couldn't find a tent.
Yes, and So I have been interrupted because we have an important guest who has just found his way to us. I said they were probably gazing at the sky for a while. And this is Michael Stoopman.
Thank you very much. I must probably got lost from all the fumes walking down the street. I was invited here this morning to talk about medicinal cannabis, and that's a strange sort of term because you can split it up between, hemp, CBD, and cannabinoids, and THC, of course, the marijuana plant. And there's a lot of confusion about, the different products that are out there. And my story basically was I was given minutes to hours to live last year. I had a fungating tumour about this big that ate into my carotid artery, and that started to bleed out, and the emergency said you've got minutes to hours. But I didn't die, and I moved to UK for a little while at a friend's place where I was taking medicinal CBD and medicinal THC. And my friend luckily is a bit of an expert and got the right product. But when it started to heal me, and over 28 oncologists and 4 other doctors said there's no hope for me, that you're going to die in total over the last few years. It's not the case. We have an endocannabinoid system that not many doctors are taught about, and we have CB1 receptors here and in our head and CB2 receptors in our body that's designed to take cannabis. So the whole body is designed for this, and yet for the last 50 years it's been buried, and it's not taught to medical community at all. But the receptors are all there, and when you activate them with these products, you get an amazing anti-inflammatory response. It's one of the biggest that the body can produce with these receptors. And that alone helps a whole range of conditions, not just cancer or Crohn's or MS or you name it. It just activates everything. So I'm basically here, I'm not sure because I've got a whole range of slides to show, but we're not showing any slides. So I don't know if I can contribute or not. I've just done a hell of a lot of research on the body and what can happen with the products. And I do know, because I've had some interesting sessions with professors of oncology and some battles regarding the way we treat people. And it's what got me activated last year was watching a news program where this baby was a few months old. The body was bright red, it was crying its eyes out, it was born with cancer, and it was just being radiated almost daily. And I thought, how barbaric is this? Then there's other ways to treat people in a much more humane way. So I'm campaigning. I've talked to the Ethics Center. I've talked to politicians, media, and doctors, and I want to bring up. I want the medical community, the oncology community, to use CBD hand in hand with chemotherapy as a foot in the door, because it'll reduce the side effects of a lot of chemotherapy and radiation. But I really don't know. There's a lot more medical experts here than myself. I'm not sure what I can contribute, but tell you a story or tell you some other things, but I'm pretty sure these experts can tell you more. If you've got any questions, just ask me.
Well, I think that it's... Oh, hang on.
Hello.
There's someone else that's just arrived after gazing at the sky for an hour.
I know, I haven't been gazing at it.
And...
I'm Marika. Beck just pulled me in to speak about the political and legal stuff that happens in Australia.
Yep.
Because that's what I do.
Okay, well, I'll hand it over to you. And then I think what we might do, because then we've got a reasonable number of people here, is maybe just, field some questions from the audience. Would be good.
Hi, I'm Marika, and some of you will know me through the Fearless Father campaign that ran for a couple of years. Little girl, Rumour Rose, whose father, Adam, got cannabis oil when she was diagnosed with stage 3 neuroblastoma, and unfortunately he was reported to the police. He was arrested, and she didn't get her cannabis oil. She got chemo, radiation, and all sorts of other horrific things, and she died a year ago on Tuesday. He went through the most horrific legal battle, and I did all the background work for his legal case. After 18 months of fighting through the courts, he was almost bankrupted. The only reason he wasn't bankrupted was because the final legal bills were waived by his lawyer. Not one politician gave a rat's ass about this man or his daughter. Every single politician in Queensland, including the Labor Party Premier, was spoken to by me. Personally, I contacted every single one of them. They didn't care. Now, after 18 months, he went to the Brisbane Supreme Court, and because of the defence that we put up, he pleaded guilty because he couldn't plead not guilty. He gave his daughter cannabis oil and he wasn't going to try and say he didn't because he had good reason to do that. We got into court, we put up a defence in terms of, we had Dr. Bonnie Goldstein from the US, who's run the cancer centres for a long time. She wrote letters of recommendation for him about using medicinal cannabis for children, particularly with cancer. He had lots of great references, etc., and a fantastic defence team, if I may say so myself. And we got no conviction recorded, no fine, no jail time. And within 2 months of no conviction being recorded, his daughter was dead. Let that sink in. They killed his daughter, dragged him through the courts. It was costing him $1,000 a week to see his own child for 3 hours a week in a community centre where he wasn't allowed to take anything of his own, he wasn't allowed to take photos, he wasn't allowed to take videos of her, because he gave her cannabis oil to try and save her life. Now, there is a child in America who's exactly the same age as his daughter. Her name is Cheyenne. You can follow her on Facebook, support for Cheyenne. She, same age, exactly the same diagnosis. Comparing their medical scans, because I actually have a medical background, even though at the moment I'm doing legal stuff. But anyway, comparing their medical scans, they could have been clones from parallel universe. Shay is still alive, she is thriving, she is doing well, she is cancer-free because of cannabis and an organic diet. Even though she started with the chemo, she had exactly the same protocol that Ruma Rose had, but they withdrew her from that protocol because it wasn't working, put her on cannabis and organic diet, and she is absolutely healthy, wonderful, cancer-free. The difference is that here in Australia we have a political and a legal system that is almost adversarial towards the people when it comes to cannabis. There are a number of reasons for that. Number one, and this is the main, if I can get any message to anybody here today, when you go and speak to your local politician, I can almost guarantee that unless someone like me or Beck has been in their office ranting at them and educating them, they will not know the fucking first thing about cannabis. I'm dead set. I live in Victoria, and after Victoria passed its, yes, we're going to legalise medical cannabis, I went to see my local politician. And I walked in there and he was all excited because he knew what I was there for. And he said, oh, did you see what we did last week? We passed, and I said, yes, and it's a pile of shit that's not going to help anyone. He went, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I started talking to him about CBD, THC, different diagnoses, etc., etc. He had no idea what THC or CBD even were. He stopped me and said, wait, forget about the legislation. What is THC? And I went, whoa, wait a minute. Now, there have been numerous politicians in different states that I've gone to visit since then, exactly the same scenario. They're voting on legislation based on some submission that some committee somewhere who may or may not know what they're doing wrote. They don't know the first thing, most of them, about cannabis, about THC, about CBD, about the law, about patients, about the endocannabinoid system. They don't know anything. And so they're voting on legislation that is impacting on all of our lives, on all of our loved ones. People are dying every single day because of the legislation in Australia that prohibits the use of cannabis as a medicine. And it's because our politicians are not educated. Now, before I got involved with Fearless Father, I thought, oh no, they're all just corrupt and they all hate us and it's just all revenue raising and rah-rah. And yes, some of that is true. But the majority of the reason that we don't see the change that we want in Australia is because the politicians are uneducated. And if you can go and educate them, just go and print out some basic information. Start taking it to your politician.
Give them a Google list. Mine is endocannabinoid system. I show Jai Whitelaw because he's just my little hero. Craig Goodwin, other cancer patients that we know. Make it real. You have to make it real. Their opinion on cannabis is whether they smoked bongs as a kid or not. Basically, that's what they know. No, it is. If they liked a cone, then they'll listen. If they didn't, they won't. So you've got to... That's why I took Jai in to see Steve. Because I knew he would fall in love with the child I did. And they do.
I just want to say one thing. We were talking earlier about the Constitution, like the Australian Constitution. Now, I can tell you there is not one thing in the Australian Constitution that will help us win this. Not one word. I have read the Australian Constitution inside out, back to front. I can probably recite it in Japanese now. There is nothing in the Australian Constitution that allows us the power to change this, because the cannabis prohibition in Australia is based on the international treaties. That is what the default position, and I'm really interested to have a chat with you later to see how Canada got around that. We're a signatory to international conventions, and they have been ratified in Australia, and that's the difference. We're a signatory to human rights conventions and things, but they haven't actually been legislated in Australia. Cannabis legislation has been ratified here, or, you know, not just cannabis, but so if you read our Narcotics Act, which was from the early 1970s, the exact wording of the international treaty is actually our Narcotics Act. So to get around it, we actually have to take on the UN, the United Nations International Treaty. Now, there is one loophole in that treaty that will allow us to change this. It's not in our constitution though. There is a loophole in that treaty that allows for a country to say, no, we don't agree with the prohibition of any substance under the Single Convention of Narcotics. And if, as a country, our politicians go to the UN and say, this is actually harming our society, there is one phrase in there that allows a country to ask for cannabis to be removed entirely from the United Nations schedules because it is harming our society. Now, that is the only thing that I can find, and like, I'm not a lawyer, I've just spent 2 years reading everything I can find about this, talking to people overseas, talking to lawyers, talking to Queen's councils, talking to legislators, talking to politicians, and that's it. We have to attack it from the UN, or we have to defy the law. I reckon defying, going out, talking to your politicians, grow your own weed, take your medicine, fuck the law, basically, because you shouldn't have to die.
100%. Sorry. No, that's incredibly interesting. And, you know, much as I hate to put a damper on it, I did exactly that. I sent my local federal MP all the information, had a really long talk to his assistant. She said, you know, brought it to his attention. I went in to see him because I was beefing on about dendritic cell therapy not being available as well. So I had the two issues. And I honestly, I think I lost him when I said, mate, you've been brainwashed. I think I lost him at that point because I was just so staggered by the bullshit that was coming out of his mouth that I just couldn't think of what else to say. And the basic message from him was is that we have our advisors and we do what our advisors tell us, but who are our advisors to the government on cannabis? Is there anyone who would like to make a few comments on that? Do we know who they are? Big Pharma.
Well, it's not quite Big Pharma. I think but basically everyone who advises the government on cannabis is known for their anti-cannabis stance. We have one lady from Epilepsy Australia who's on that council who is here in Nimbin, and she, I think, was supposed... Would you like to say something about being on the advisory council for cannabis? That would be... I really would be interested to hear that, because you're about the only one that we can find that is not actually a rabid anti-cannabis... Sorry? Yeah, sure.
So Carol is from Epilepsy Action Australia, and we've put her in some awkward positions in this last weekend, and I'm awfully sorry. But, you know, there are a few politicians in this country that do walk by our side, and there are a few professionals, and I'm going to get choked up. This woman moves mountains where mountains shouldn't be able to bloody move. Yes. This woman, an epilepsy family, can ring and go, Carol, and she'll go where, when and how. And she does. We ring her in the morning, she's there in the afternoon. We've put her, she's on boards, but she's real, and so I'd like you all to give her a round of applause, and I'm going to use this opportunity to say thank you. Okay, so thank you.
Oh, awkward situations is not wrong, is it?
Go, Carol, you got this.
Hey, Marika, how are you going, mate? I am sitting on the advisory council, the Federal Advisory Council. I was terrified they'd look at my Facebook page and decide that they didn't want me anywhere near it.
How did you sneak on there?
I'm sitting on the board of the Lambert Initiative, and I'm also on the steering committee for the New South Wales trials. Queensland government hates me. I've got a few claims to fame, I suppose. Look, I do whatever I can to progress the legal and regulatory frameworks, because I think we've kind of got to. You know, you've got to try and get in there and work within it and push. You've also got to push from outside. You would appreciate that I'm bound by confidentiality in terms of what's said within meetings. And, you know, we have to sign forms and all of that, and are liable to all sorts of penalties if I tell you what's been said within meetings. I did leave the first, and it's been the only one, meeting of the Federal Council feeling quite depressed recently. I think some of what I've just heard is accurate. People are being guided by their advisors. You know, some advisor somewhere tells someone something, and they've read some piece of literature somewhere. Very few of them have met the people that are impacted. If they have, it's been one. They might have met one, and they've shown a lot of sympathy and then forgotten all about it and got back on another path. It's such a complex situation, that I sometimes think humanity's outsmarted itself, you know, with all of the laws and things that we've put in place, all of the regulations we've put in place, and now we don't know how to unravel it. Oh my God, I see Ian sitting there, and you're going to write up what I say, aren't you? No, you're not. I wish I had some answers. I don't have answers. I only know that when a family comes to me, and there have been quite a lot of them, as you say, when they come to me, then we try to do everything we can to support that family. Sometimes it sees me sitting in discussions, debates, interesting conversations with premiers, and then trying to document later what was said and try to hold people accountable for what they say. I've actually, at the Federal Council, described a young client that we all know and that we've seen here today, and the work that he and his dad and her dad and others have tried to do, because he doesn't even want to break the law. He wants to do the right thing, but he doesn't want his child to suffer. And I've told them that they have no choice. They've tried everything and they have no choice. I think there was a conversation last night, and Nikki, thank you for getting us to think about why we were there. I was certainly there, and I'm here today because I think all pathways need to be followed. So I do need to sometimes put the hat on and go into the meetings in Canberra and try to interface. If I think that there's anything missing, it's the interface. It's people that can sit on those councils and boards and represent consumers, but are also dealing with the real people. Not some advisor somewhere that's read some document.
That's why we say you've got to keep it real. That's why we ask parents of critically ill children, come with us, let us introduce you to your local MP. We're providing it in a safe environment, which is always important, but it is absolutely about making it real. They don't know what they don't know.
So, a few years ago I was not a cannabis supporter. I'm not allowed.
Welcome to the
Here I am, second year in a row. I'm technically not allowed to be a cannabis advocate.
but I've got to say, this is just pure fact. I've met too many families, too many children, and I've known them pre-cannabis and post-cannabis. And it's reality. I'll say it again, I keep saying it, loving parents don't lie. You don't give your child cannabis and then say it's made an amazing difference. Why would you do that? Why would you break the law? Why would you do that? It does make a difference. We're a long way from having all the science. We're a long way from knowing exactly which cannabinoid might help which condition. But there'd be a lot more achieved if we could actually look at some of the successes and study those instead of ignoring those and doing other trials. So look, thank you.
And that's actually hit upon another area, isn't it? Is the fact that all the advisors for the government, everything relies on the gold standard of research in medical science, which is based on a purely reductionist model, which means that everything gets taken down to its molecules. And of course is what's fractured the way we practice medicine altogether, treating symptoms instead of the whole person. And so they're wanting proof in forms of, you know, double-blind, randomised controlled trials. And of course, you just can't treat cannabis medicine like that. There's another form of trial called the N=1 or the N+1 type of study, where each patient is their own study, and you collect data on each patient, and it is still in actual fact an acceptable form of scientific study. So really, one of the fights that we have is to try and convince the medical profession that there are other ways of studying this and other ways of getting data that will help people in the future. And I think something that is one of the things that was talked about last night too was that, you know, it's about time we tried to get some sort of database together so that we can create some data. And that data comes from just retrospective studies on each individual patient, because cannabis medicine can only be practiced on an individual basis. So if we're looking at double-blind randomised controlled trials, we will never get a positive outcome. There will always be a small group of people for whom it will suit, and the rest, oh, it won't work, it doesn't work, therefore it's not a good enough medicine. When in actual fact, they're trying to treat, you know, an individual with the one-size-fits-all approach, which doesn't work. So that sort of introduced that subject. So if there's anyone who'd like to... There you go.
Thanks, Deb. I'd actually like to ask Sita a question. And some of you may have missed her introduction earlier, but and I might have not heard everything, but and Sita can explain a bit more about what she does. But my question is, we're talking about trying to find some kind of... we changed the word standardisation out of charter. I love it. So what in your world in Canada, and what's happening when you were talking earlier about the different milligrams per se, you've got different cannabinoid structures depending on what's going on for the client, which is what we do. You've got access to all the testing equipment that we don't have access to. But my question is, as a community, is there cross-referencing? Is there discussion? Do you help each other out? I mean, how has that actually happened there? Because we would like to hear what's happened in another country, and is it successful?
I work in a very, very small community. I work mostly for a naturopath who, for about 7 years, and we've had many, many successes, and he's in the process of doing writing up the patient studies. It's very expensive to get published. I think it's about $6,000 a study or something like that. So, but I'm aware of the studies that he's done, and the testing has to be done in order for these studies to be validated. So that's where we're starting with some data where these patients have been taking medicine that's been tested. Also, the strains that we're using, I work with 3 basic strains, and I've had those and I've got the tests with me. I've had them extensively tested for everything, including terpenes. And we know, for example, there's a strain called Cannatonic, and it repeatedly works for brain cancer, over and over again, as well as lung cancer. So also Cush's for leukemia. And this is just, we do a lot of reading, and we also do some trial and errors. And for example, in leukemia, they get tested 3 times a week. So when we administer Purple Kush for a week, and we find that the blasts aren't going down quite as we like, we can try another Kush and see if we get a better result. Sometimes we mix 2 or 3 Kushes together and find that we get a better result than just using one. So with the leukemic patients, it's the easiest to play around with the strains, and you get the best results. You get a really good picture.
So do you communicate with other people providing similar things to yourself?
Yes, I network. Very few people do what I do at that level. There are a lot of dispensaries who do work, but I'm a private contractor, so I work mostly with the patients that I work with, and when I'm asked, or I do a lot of phone work, and I do try and share as much as possible the knowledge of that strain. But it's already out there in Canada that, oh, Purple Kush I have a Purple Kush and it works for sleep, and with everybody, it's amazing. So.
We can talk all day.
Can I just ask you a quick question? Is your database open source? Like, can I get on there? Like, where is it?
I don't have a database.
Why would you not have a database?
Mainly because I've been looking after all these patients basically by myself. I grow the medicine, I make the medicine, I formulate it, I ship it, I
You wouldn't believe how much work that is. And with that, we don't do this. The people that are in this cause the way we are, we don't do it for money. So this woman's coming from a place of love, and it's all consuming this cause.
But if we're lab testing the cannabis before it's administered, and then you can follow through with saying that this kush works with this ailment, we have proof, here's our study, this is the documentation.
We can't do that here in Australia.
Is that because right, so as soon as you start saying these are the...
We can't do that in Australia because it's illegal to test cannabis in Australia. It is bullshit, it's absolute bullshit. We will talk up here for hours upon hours. Is there any questions on the floor? I'm happy to walk around with the mic. Anyone want to ask something in particular? You all came here for a reason today, so...
Don't put the mic up the socket,
Sorry,
Could I just say one more thing? What about a private internal database when you're still collecting all the data?
We're actually doing that in Australia, but I'd love to hear what they're doing in Canada.
That's what I'm...
So in Canada, I work with a naturopath who about 80% of my medicine goes to his patients. And he is the person that keeps track of all this, and he's the person that's writing up the study.
He's got the records.
I have the records of what they ordered, and I have the records, so I correlate between, and with my discussions with the doctor also, I have regular discussions with him on how we can change the medicine, because I have access. I've been in Vancouver for over 20 years. I used to have a...
So it's not illegal for you to keep...
Oh no, it's totally illegal what I do.
Really? Also?
All I'm allowed to do is grow my plants for my own use, but basically what I do is patients send me their medicine and I formulate it for them into a way that they can use. Unfortunately, not all patients have access to the medicine that they need. We have 40 licensed producers, but I have patients that are willing to pay the price with the licensed producer and they just don't have it. So I have a lot of contacts who I know grow certain strains, so that's why I stick to a narrow scope of strains with the patients so that we can provide them with the medicine they need. And I make sure that I have medicine for patients for 2 months out.
So you're sourcing information combined for the strains, combined with the doctor who naturopath is administering it. Together, you guys have all the data, basically.
Yeah, basically.
That's awesome. It'd be great to get that out to the public, like somehow, maybe in a country that does allow it, and then just post it online.
Well, we have an idea to do a website where people self-report, but we don't have the financial ability or the workforce to do it. I mean, if you want to do that, you know.
I'll find a website for you, seriously.
I'll give you my card and we can stay in touch and you know, we'll see what we can do.
Just post it in a country that doesn't have adverse laws to publish.
Well, I don't think you can publish anything you want in Canada, can't you?
Not giving legal advice, especially to you. I'll say something. I'm a lawyer and I'm licensed in 2 jurisdictions, like England and Wales and Canada. My dad was diagnosed about a year ago with stage 1 rectal cancer. And so I'm very lucky that I represent a very nice cross-section in the cannabis industry. So when I immediately heard about his situation, I was like, well, don't worry, you know, Mom, Dad, just go to this farm up in the mountains. And in fact, it was this individual that had allegedly taught, well, Rick Simpson, who's a big name in Canada, about Indian hemp oil. And so, yeah, I could have gotten my dad through the whole legal medical program, which would have taken weeks, possibly months. But I was just like, you know, this is what you need to do. And actually that dialogue, because before he was, you know, very difficult to discuss cannabis, but he wanted to then to start learning as much as he could. So I started bringing him with me to conferences, and to the point where here's someone that had done a total 180 to the point now that he starts explaining that this is the crime of the century. Why are we all having this kept in the dark? I mean, I don't know. I think there's a lot of information written, and we take for granted because we live in Vancouver, and there's like the urban shaman Chris Bennett and lots of other researchers who've gone right back to cannabis. And I mean, you start looking at things in the Bible, for example. Jesus refers to a seed-bearing plant with the Hebrew name cannabis. Well, that's not too much of a stretch from cannabis. It would take 6 pounds of the seed-bearing plant to make 6 ounces of a golden oil. I mean, this isn't new. In Genesis, they talk again. It's, what is it? All the seed-bearing fruits, and it was good. I mean, again, there's the natural law in all of this. So I think instead of asking yourself, well, the law is the law, I think the real interesting question is well, prior to this international prohibition, cannabis was the main staple in North America for pharmaceutical use. I mean, in ancient Roman times, cannabis was burned in large urns at the Senate because you would put Rome ahead of yourself. There's a certain benevolence that comes from cannabis. You go back and realize that cannabis has been such an important part of human evolution with having an endocannabinoid system. So really, when you start digging deeper, I call it going down the rabbit hole, and the further you go, it just almost seems like everything that you've been taught about this plant and the regulation and the need to be so strict around it is really not what you think it's about. And I implore you all to learn as much as you can and talk about it, because the more we talk about this, the more we can have dialogue, and that's how things initially change. Here, over to you guys.
It's interesting doing a lot of research into the ancient recipes, and I remember looking for extractions going back to ancient to Greece and Egypt, Mesopotamia, and there were no such thing. They didn't actually do any extractions. I sort of already knew this as an intuitive. I guess the information comes, and we're all intuitive, by the way. It's not a special gift. I just happen to really understand mine, and so I was really intrigued by, here is this cannabis being used back in 4000 BC by the ancient Mesopotamian medical situation. They actually found these stone tablets that are actually currently at London Museum. So these are real, they're touchable. Now, when they have unscribed the information on these tablets, they were talking about both a topical and oral use of a cannabis infusion, but it was only one of about 9 different other elements. So this is the one thing I implore, and one message from me to you is cannabis is not used alone. It is not a magic bullet. It is not going to cause miracles all by itself. Yes, it's a teacher plant, one of what we consider 11 teacher plants on the planet. All of them are illegal in most of the world, by the way, because they're a consciousness opening. We're not talking about the spirituality of these plants as well, and not just cannabis, but herbs and food. So these are the kinds of things that these discussions can open up. There's a lot more to this than just healing someone who's ill. And in fact, I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues, but we don't treat an illness. We try and help the body to heal itself. We're working from a different direction. We don't pretend to be medics. We do need to start working with the current system, because otherwise it's just going to be a debacle. And there are slowly openings being in there, and what Jenny's going through and the media behind what's happening for her is, for the rest of us, amplifying what's really going on. That we sort of have been hiding to a certain degree because we've had to. Well, we believe we had to because we believe we're going to get into inverted commas into trouble. But realistically, there's been some amazing information here that we can actually take back. That's going to inspire us to move forward, in our own community here in Australia. But I just wanted you to remember, it's not a magical bullet, but in combination with diet, nutrition, how you think about it. If you don't think something's going to work, it won't. It doesn't matter what it is. So there's a whole lot here. So, if you're working with someone with cannabis, someone who's using it, ask them, how is it? Are there nutritional protocols? What are they actually doing to empower their own body, mind, soul, to actually become more healthy, more well, not just take this because I need to clear my cancer or my epilepsy or whatever it may be. So, and I think that Jenny might have a lot more to say on that direction.
Thanks. I won't go on too much longer, but that is very true. There's no point giving someone cannabis oil if they're going to give up, because I know it doesn't work. No point giving someone cannabis oil if they've got a crap diet, because it's not going to work. They can be pouring sugar into their body, and cannabis oil is going to do nothing for them. It takes a lot of things, and also this, separating CBD, THC, all of that sort of stuff. We know that there's an entourage effect. We know that the cannabis is basically more effective when we use it together and use it effectively. So, we know it's a hard road, and it's going to be a lot longer yet. We know we're not going to get exactly what we want straight away, but what we want and what we need is full whole plant extract. We need access to it, and we need home grow, because there's no point having a pharmaceutical product that people can't afford. So, and we know one of the basic things is sick people haven't got a lot of money, because usually they've gone through everything, they've gone through all these other treatments that have cost them heaps, and they've basically got nothing left. So, we don't have a lot of rich, sick people. So, to say that, this product is going to cost $400 or something for 80 mils is just insane, and is basically just another carrot dangled in front of you that says, here you go, you can have it, but no, you can't, here you can have it, no, you can't. So, don't put up with that crap, do it yourself. You can grow a plant, you can grow a few plants.
I know this cancer. I just want to go through a couple of prices, right? Don't be paying anything over, really. Fundamental. If it's for a child, you really shouldn't be paying a lot. In Australia, about certainly no more than $150 for a 50ml bottle. That's just that. Anything else, you need to get in contact with me on Facebook and give me a name, right? Or contact MCUA, or contact somebody, because we can't have this getting out of proportion because the law isn't there to back up the patient, all right? Now, with regards to cannabis medicine for cancer, it's a different product. We use a FECO medicine and not a tincture. FECO medicine, there is still a couple of compassionate providers in Australia, but they are very stretched and very exhausted and very everything else, right? So you're going to have to, my recommendation, if you want the best value for what you need to go and source the pound yourself.
Yes.
You need to do the research, you need to find out whether you need indica, you need to find out whether you need to sativa, you need to find out, I'm going to query on the CBD for breast cancer and things like that. You need to do your homework, right? And then you need to find your pound. Now, a pound of cannabis on the street at the moment in Queensland, because that's what I pay, is $3,600.
Come to Adelaide, 2A.
Adelaide's got 2.8. I asked someone, a very influential... Hang on. So Victoria is $5,000. And that's what I'm coming to, right? So if you've got to go out and buy street weed, let me tell you, if they go to some places that are making FICO, making your RSO oil, you're getting charged $100 a gram. For 90 days, that's going to cost you $6,000, and that's all you get, right? So what we do is we go by the pound, we make you RSO, we make you tinctures, we make you balm, we make you cake. You will consume cannabis for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week until the bastard of cancer is gone. Even when the cancer is gone, don't think that is it. It's not. You need to have your maintenance dose for 4 years after you are cancer-free. Don't think you can just go, great, it's gone, fuck the cannabis. You can't. Your endocannabinoid system still needs feeding or the cancer will come back. Okay? It's non-negotiable. You have an endocannabinoid system. You need to feed it. And even that means if you're not willing to break the law, get hemp seeds. Go to a health shop, get some normal hemp oil, use it on top of your salad every day. But activate your endocannabinoid system. And if any of you learn anything today, it should be that endocannabinoid system. We're not talking shit here. It is absolutely spot on. The other thing, and a father, he was here and he did just say something to me. He wants, and he's a dad, right? And he's got a dad with a sick daughter. And he said to me, he wants all of you to know it starts in your own backyard. Get a seed, put a plant in the ground, love it, and it will grow. I'll tell you a little story. I hope there's no bloody media here. Oh, here we go. I have a few plants at my house, and I'm no grower. I'm shit, right? Fair income. I'm shit. But on the 2nd of January, when I was outside looking at my plants, I got a phone call that rocked my world when this one got raided. Was it 2nd of January? 4th. Oh, not bad. So on the 4th of January, I went out to those cannabis plants. I'm sorry, Carol, you haven't heard any of this. I went out to those cannabis plants and I said, girls, you got to grow. These bastards are raiding everyone. Please just grow. Well, my girls grew 6 foot this year. So grow it, right? I'm employed by Queensland Government. I have 4 children in my care that are my blood. My eldest is here now. Grow it. Right, because then you can't be ripped off with shonky oil. You can't be charged $300 a week for tincture that doesn't work. And you can't be charged for bloody, what is it, pond mud or whatever they want to call it when they're being nasty. You grow your own. And that way we've got community around us. I can ring someone and go, I need half a pound of this and I'll give it you back in 6 weeks. Yeah, Beck, no drama. Sweet, I got your medicine. You got to give it back in 6 weeks. Yeah, sweet. And we've got community going. Right, and then they can't touch us because it's, well, you have your pharmaceutical and we'll play your pharmaceutical game, but we will also have in our back pocket our little black market stuff. And we've still got the bit of paper that says we can have cannabis here. Doesn't say what cannabis, it just says we can have cannabis. So we can get the script for the pharma shit and still be using our black market stuff. And this one taught me that about 2 years ago now. And she showed me THC in a pill.
That's right.
It was in this tent, yes. So that's what I say, it starts at home, take responsibility, do your research. If you feel overwhelmed, if you want backup to a politician's meeting, we can cover that in most states in Australia now. So just reach out. I'm a Harmony in Healthcare, Becky B, I don't say no to no one. So just reach out and get it done. Be proud, you know what I mean? All you're doing is trying to make your life better. Be proud of that. Honestly, trust the plant will reward you.
Okay, if I can just say one thing about something that I've just been reminded. If you've got cancer, you might not have time to grow it. So yes, you know, go out and access it. But something I'd like to say is for people that are making it. A lot of people that make cannabis oil for themselves use one plant. They use one plant and they make oil out of one plant, and that's where your mistake is, I'm sorry guys, because you're restricting what the cannabinoids are that are in that plant. So the thing, if I can suggest it, and what I do with mine, I never use one plant. I use at least 4 to 7 different strains of plants every time I make an oil, because it's an oil that I'm trying to cover for a lot of different people. So I use a lot of different strains, so I'm trying to cover as many different cannabinoids as I possibly can. So that's my suggestion to you. Rather than going out, if you're going to buy medicine, rather than going out and buying 1 pound of one particular strain, go and buy buy a stack of different ounces of a few different plants and use those together, and you'll get a far better oil than you'll get that if you buy 1 pound and use that 1 pound only. Okay, so if that can be any suggestion to you, that is what it is. Okay?
I have one more suggestion. What I tell everyone that I know is ask your dealer for the bottoms of the bags, the dry stuff at the bottom that people don't really want to buy. That's the best medicine because it's got all the little trichomes, and you can get lots of little bags. Like I was saying earlier, the more cannabinoids, different profiles you can get in your system, the better chance you have of hitting the right receptors.
And there's another cannabinoid that a lot of people don't talk about, and that's CBN. A lot of people talk about CBD and how wonderful that is. CBN is just as important, and a lot of people don't know how to get it, and I'm going to tell you the secret of how to get it right now. You need to age your cannabis. A lot of people will just cure their cannabis so it still has a certain amount of moisture content in it. If you want CBN, you'll get 1% CBN if you cure your cannabis. If you age it for at least 6 months, so that when you hold it in your hand and crackle it, it'll just crackle and virtually go to a powder, you'll get at least 10% CBN out of it. So that's a lot of my secrets. So use as many different strains as you can in one go and age some of it as much as possible so that you're getting the CBN out of it, and it'll be far more effective than if you're just getting, say, CBD and THC alone. So that's the thing, we don't understand and we don't know yet what a lot of these cannabinoids are doing and how many more there are there that we don't even understand yet. So the thing is, when we start restricting and taking one thing out and using that alone, that's when we start having problems. So if we start using it as a whole plant and using the entourage effect as though it was meant to be, then that's when we start getting the best effects. So coming back to the last point, if we're going to do it, don't wait. You haven't got time to wait. There is no time to wait when you're dying, so don't be afraid, don't be ashamed. Cannabis is not a bad drug just because the government has told us that it's a bad drug. And just because it's illegal to use it, stuff them. We need to save our lives. So to be legally alive, you know, who gives a shit? I would rather be illegally alive than legally dead. Okay, and that's what we've got to remember, guys. It's our lives and it's important, and we've got to stand up for it. And as long as you guys stay quiet and don't say anything about it, nothing will ever change. When everybody stands up and everybody starts screaming for it, that's when we'll have change in this country.
Wonderful. So, we leave here with a couple of messages. We want the whole plant and nothing but the plant. Is that right? And we are just going to keep telling the government every single day in every single way that enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
And thank you all very much. It's been a bit of a scratchy sort of presentation, but I think we've got a lot of wonderful... Well, I mean, it's sort of, you know, we were a bit disorganised, come on. But this is Nimbin and everyone's stoned, so they probably don't give a shit anyway. And thank you all. It's been absolutely really educational, and thank you to all the panel and our Canadian visitors. And now I'm going to go up and have a toke.